we're on to our next guest speaker. We are being spoilt rotten today. Lord John Baird is in the building. I know he's a little bit late, but he's here. Lord John Baird. So Baron John Baird is a British social entrepreneur and life peer, best known, of course, as the co-founder of The Big Issue, a magazine which empowers the homeless and vulnerable in-housed individuals. A dedicated advocate for social change, he serves as an independent crossbench member of the House of Lords, championing solutions from poverty to homelessness. What a great pleasure it is to introduce Lord John Baird.
Am I allowed to swear? What a load of bollocks. What a terrible photograph. That was the first year I went into the House of Lords. I should say, the reason I'm in the House of Lords is because I volunteered. No one chose me. No one said, Mr. Baird, you'd be very useful to our party political whatever. What happened was, I heard that you could apply to become a member of the House of Lords. And I had spent so much of my time working in the emergency of homelessness, and working in the emergency of poverty, and working in the emergency of racism and chauvinism and all in that area. And I realized that the big problem was that I was scurrying around doing my work, and the real problem came to me when someone said, John Baird, you're such a beautiful thinker. You're like a butterfly. You're so gorgeous. As you can see, excuse me. I talk too much, so I have to drink all the time. You're so gorgeous, you're so beautiful. And the thing about you, Johnny Baird, is that you really know how to think outside the box. And then one time in the middle of the night, I thought, Jesus, why do they keep going on about me being a person who thinks outside the box? And then I realized, of course, the problem was that the box wasn't working. So you have all these lovely people dancing around, doing all their wonderful things, trying to square the circle, trying to get grown-up thinking around, for instance, people leaving care and ending up selling The Big Issue, or ending up in prison, or ending up in the streets, or ending up in prostitution. There's no grown-up thinking in that area, and we will come back to that. So I decided that what I would do is get into the box. So I applied. You can apply, everybody here over the age of 23 can apply to become a people's peer. So I applied, and after a number of investigations into me, and the references and all that, I got in. They do about 2 or 3 a year of people who they call crossbenchers, and I was one of them. Anyway, So I went into the House of Lords. I immediately met numerous people coming up to me saying, John Baird, you're such an important geezer, and now you're Lord Baird. Can you come and help me with one of my problems here and one of my problems there and all that? And always going on about the emergency of the Am I talking too loud? Sorry, it's a terrible life as a boy soldier, and also being a member of a workers' revolutionary party where we had to shout at workers who were all telling us to piss off. Anyway, 2 swears. Anyway, and they're all asking me to get involved in the emergency. Now you imagine one person, 500 emergencies. Which one are you going to choose? So I said, look, you get on with trying to fill the hold caused in the emergency, and I will try and step back and try and prevent the emergency happening. Turn the tap off. End the inheritance of poverty. So anyway, as you can see, I haven't turned the tap off. The tap is still dripping and sometimes it's running. And more people are being drawn into the crisis. More and more children and families are breaking up because we have not created the kind of government thinking that will enable us to dismantle the problem rather than keep tinkering with it. The House of Lords and the House of Commons are full of people who love nothing more than doing a little bit more for the poor. And when I say, hang on, can we do something else? Can we dismantle poverty? Can we prevent poverty? Can we prevent the inheritance of poverty? Which means if you inherit poverty, you will live with it for the rest of your life, even though you modify it in some ways, even though you become a person who is no longer poor. You are still bringing the trauma of poverty along with you. And every now and then, it'll trip you up. So anyway, there I was. And you want to know why I was there. Who in heaven's name invited John Anthony Bird into the Houses of Parliament? I'm the founder of The Big Issue, if you don't know. Maybe you do know, because I've got my mate Nick Karim sitting in the front row, and he tells everybody what I've been doing. He runs round telling everybody my life history, so I don't have to tell it. It's terrible. And I'm trying to sell autobiographies. Anyway, so I'm the founder of The Big Issue. I started life in the slums of Notting Hill. My family are London Irish. I was homeless at 5, 6, 7, put in an orphanage, put into care for 3 years between the ages of 7 and 12. Fortunately, got out of that. But then the damage had been done to me, because as soon as the family got together, I was stealing, I was robbing from the school I was in, I was daubing swastikas on churches and synagogues. I was doing all sorts of antisocial stuff because my mind had been screwed up by losing my parents, fortunately only for 3 years. But the damage had been done, the mind-forged manacles that come with poverty. I spent time in and out of boys' prisons and places like that. At the age of 16, I learned to read and write in a boys' prison, and it was the change of me. It took me another 15 years to become the posh geezer that you now see before you. And I stopped nicking and I stopped doing all sorts of things. But back to care. Why do we need grown-up thinking? Why do we need to converge the energies of so many government departments, converge the energies that are created and are expressed in the form of a budget? Why is it that when I started The Big Issue and we did a survey, 70% of the people, many of them in the ex-armed forces, 70% of them had, like me, passed through care. 70% of them were people who had been harmed in earlier stages of their lives. And yet, virtually every one of them, when they came out at 16, there was a very precarious relationship with support and help so that they then could move on and build themselves a life. All right? Is that all right with that? Shall I go now? I was told I can speak for an hour and a half. I was also told I can only speak for 10 minutes, so anywhere between. What I'd like to say is, when I met Fatima through my great friend Nick Karim, I wasn't impressed with her. I was not impressed with her. Do you know why I wasn't impressed with her? Because she talked more than me. She came up to me like a bullet out of a gun. John Bird, this is what we need to do about care. And she was like a whirligig. And I went, all right, yeah. I don't get a lot of this, but I get too much of it. And I said to Nick, I said, I won't say, I was about to say, for fuck's sake, but I won't. I thought, keep her away from me. Keep her away. She's like knocking me over. I know that she's a tough Olympian, but I was kind of reeling. And then Nick explained to me what she wanted to do. And the next time I met Fatima, she'd actually chilled out a bit and realized that she wasn't going to use me as a punch bag. You know? And what happened was I fell in love with the very idea of converging the energies of everyone who cares for the life of our children, who leave care, and then they're left to care for themselves, and they fall down, and they often have the reversals of fortunes that lead them, like me, into the prison system or into the streets, into selling the big issue and having all sorts of problems. So I fell in love with the idea of this umbrella, this convergent energy of coming together, that nobody who ever says, I want to help in the fight to end the oppressive nature of what happens when you leave care. There are many, many good examples of care that works. There are many, many good examples of people who know how to support people leaving care. Let us encourage those. Let's husband our efforts and bring those together. Let's present the best expressions of it in order to change the ones that are not doing so well. So I fell in love with the idea, and I fell in love with it for another reason, because for the last couple of years, I can tell some jokes, by the way. I love telling jokes, but they're all crap. Anyway, I love the idea because when I went into the House of Lords and saw all of these people scurrying around trying to fix what in the print we used to call a gnat's cock of change, we couldn't just think about that, making a little change here, making a little change there, making a little change there, making a little change, but never ever converging their energies to bring about incredible change, almost as though human beings had never ever grown up and learned to work together to dismantle a problem. Next month, we celebrate 80 years since the end of the war. One of the most wonderful things about the Second World War that people don't ever talk about was what's called the war economy. And the war economy was very simple. There were hundreds and hundreds, thousands of engineering firms all over Britain. And there were these big companies who could make, a Spitfire a day or a tank a week. But somebody said, look, you've got thousands of all these little people who've got a few railway arches. How do we converge their energy to help us dismantle the war? So what they did was they got somewhere in Sheffield making a little bit of a wing, and somewhere in Blackpool doing and they converged all of the energies and they brought them all together. It was the most phenomenal thing that Britain ever did. And it has been copied by every nation. No one ever knows about this. And it was people like Stafford Cripps, Armory and all that sort of stuff. He, by the way, is my ex-grandfather-in-law because I used to be married to his granddaughter. But she threw me out because she said she preferred the company of cats. And that wasn't the musical. Anyway. But the thing was, if we had that energy, that perceptiveness, what if we wanted to destroy the problems that come about through care? We would do what Fatima is asking us to do. Bring things together, converge the energy. I'll introduce you to a very posh word that I used in the House of Lords, concatenation. It was so posh that none of them knew what the word meant. So I'm now in Hansard as a person who introduced a word which they all have to go to the dictionary to find out. Concatenation, bringing people together, bringing things together. If we can do it in the Second World War, when we don't even know when we're going to be alive the next week or the next month, why can't we do it now? Why can't we converge our energies? The reason I say this also is because I have got a bill going through the House of Lords and through the Commons that has a cat in hell's chance, no, a snowball in hell's chance. Do you know why? Because government works in silos. It doesn't join it all together. It doesn't look at our children as having health problems, of having education problems, as having problems to do with parenting. All these different government departments taking, and they see the child as a divided self. I have got a bill and it's called the Ministry of Poverty Prevention and Cure. And what it is exactly what Fatima is doing if she was in government. I'm sorry, am I blowing too much smoke up your ass? Sorry, forgive me. Terrible, isn't it? Yeah. I hope this place isn't holy. I hate swearing in churches and places like that. Anyway, bringing together, converging our energies. My Ministry of Poverty Prevention accepts the fact that 8 government departments are all trying to do something about poverty. 8 government departments. So what do you get? You get a scattergun effect. You don't get sitting down and saying, hang on, whatever we have done so far is not working. So let's try and do something different. And the first thing we must do is recognize that things are not working. And recognize that the one thing we should do is converge our energies, share our budgets, become useful to each other so that we can dismantle problems. I'm going to end there, but I must end with a joke, if you don't mind. Can I tell one joke? Did you know that there's a new government department opened recently, and it's a department for unfinished research. Did you know that 9 out of 10, thank you very much.